Hey there, everybody. What's going on? And welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. This right here, as you all know, is the podcast where we dive into the deep, dark, murky waters with a plethora of legendary guests. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, the #1 scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's REXXX. You might also know me as AKA the King of Sleaze, AKA the Hair Metal High Priest, and most importantly, AKA Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. Take one look, folks. Was on the phone with my lawyers today. DNA testing almost absolutely 100% conclusive. And we will prove once and for all what we've all known all along. That you are looking at the son of glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked a lot of grams. I got a million fans. I'm your ice cream man. Mr. Wop Bop a Loo Bop a Wop Bam Bam Shazam. Hot damn. I am feeling good. Everybody in the house, Pops looking good. Keith looking good. My beautiful audience looking good. Me perpetually looking good. And for me, that is made possible by any way you look at this, any way you slice it, any way you cut it. You're going to get results. You're going to get the quaff like Roth. Coming to you, as always, from the lush lavender lounge of love. And joined, as always, by the great Keith Hernandez Puppet, helping me bring you the No Frills podcast. You don't get no frills, but you do get thrills, and that's a lot better. You get the privilege. The thrill is you get the privilege to look at this beautiful mug. And yours, Keith, of course. I don't want to impugn the big guy over there. Just as important to me, my sidekick, my confidant, my everything over there. That's the man right there. Again, Mr. International does it again. My reach, the Pod Scum reach, extends once again overseas. I know what you're thinking. Rex, you've done it again. Well, yes, I have. And our guest is here right now, a real bona fide fucking legend. So let's get into it and chop it up with him on Pod Scum. Let's go. Where is he? There he is. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm fired up to have you here. I'll tell you that, man. Very excited to have you here, David Haley, drummer for Psycroptic. And I always tell my audience that it's funny because I've done over 120 of these. And the more that I realize in the last several months that I've really been extending my reach out to people in other countries. And I love it. It's great.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and it always boggles my mind. I've had other people from Australia on, and it always boggles my mind that it's almost 8:00 p.m. here and fucking tomorrow morning for you already. Crazy.
We're in the future.
We're in the future. We are in the future. First of all, how's everything going with you in life right now?
Good. It's good. Yeah, just keeping busy as always. A lot of stuff on the go, band-wise, work-wise. So it's busy but good. Busy but good.
And what was your upbringing like? How early on did you know that you wanted to be a musician? Do you remember the first music that really resonated with you, and like when you really first got bit by the rock and roll bug, so to speak?
It wasn't planned, to be honest. We've gone deep straight away. I grew up in a very small country town. And as part of the education curriculum, it was mandatory to do music in school. So everyone had to do it. And being in quite a small classroom, the facilities weren't amazing. And there was, how do I put this? Basically, we had things chosen for us,
Okay.
When I first started, in grade 7, doing the music lessons, I wanted to be a guitarist. It's like, cool, yeah, well, I want to play guitar. It's like, well, there's already too many guitarists. We don't have enough guitarists. We need a class drummer. And our music teacher basically lined everyone up, and whoever could hold down a straight 8 rock beat was the drummer. And as it went through the class, it came to me. I seem to be able to pick it up a little bit quicker than everyone else for whatever reason. And it's like, all right, Dave, you're the drummer for the class. And that was it.
But not really what you want to do, though. Now, why not the drummer, though? I mean, is it that age old, being the front man and the guitarist is this, is the coveted spot?
I mean, I think when you're like 10, 11, 12, you don't really know what's going on. You don't, you have no idea. But, maybe just the idea of being a lead guitarist, because that's always presented.
Yeah, it's appealing.
Yeah, it's a bit more appealing. So it's hard to remember my exact thoughts. I'm not going to pretend I can. But I know it was initially it was not my first choice. But as we went on, it's like, okay, well, of course I fell in love with the instrument and kept going with it. But for the first couple of years, it was just a couple of hours every week in music class with no further aspirations. And
did you have aspirations to do anything else, or like how early on did you know? What I mean? Like, are you one of those kids that was like, maybe I want to be a fireman, maybe I want to be a doctor? I mean, did anything else enter the equation?
I mean, I still don't know what I want to do. So, I think around the age 13, 14. No, it was probably when I was 13. Because I asked my parents to, okay, well, can you buy me a drum kit? And the proviso was, well, you've got to go to get lessons first. And once your teacher says it's time for a kit, then it's time for a kit. So I think they wanted to see that I was disciplined enough to practice and make an effort to advance the instrument before they invested money in it. Which of course,
kudos to your parents too, though, because most parents aren't too thrilled and probably psyched when drums are the instrument of choice.
Yeah, I mean, they were, to be honest, very supportive. They didn't try to talk me out of it, but they were like, well, we want to see it's not a fad. So you've got to dedicate, X amount of hours per week, go and get weekly lessons, which initially I wasn't too stoked with, but I learned to love it. And then, probably about 15, I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to get serious about this.
Yeah. And do you remember the first, real music that started to resonate with you and really start to get in your blood and really get you excited, especially particularly, extreme metal? Do you remember those first really heavy bands that you were into?
Oh, definitely, starting out with, Metallica, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, Skid Row, that kind of thing. And then there was a weekly metal show on the national radio. At the time, it was called 3 Hours of Power. So every week, I put the cassette tape in and tape it just to find new music. And I remember being, blown away. The first time I was really blown away was hearing some of the Australian death metal bands, in particular bands like ABRAMELIN, Blood Dusted, Damaged, all that sort of stuff. And that was probably 14, 15, hearing death metal and being like, this is completely absurd. This is crazy. And then, going down that path, this is pre-YouTube, pre-Spotify, pre-internet pretty much. So you're doing a lot of tape trading per se, someone's got something, it's like, oh, have you heard, check this out? No, I've never heard Cannibal Corpse. Here's Sepultura. So everything was new and different, and very exciting. So around 15, that's when I took the big dive.
And when do you and of course, your brother Joe also in Psycroptic with you, were you guys in other bands apart from each other, or were you guys always in a band together?
Since we both started playing, we pretty much played in the bands together or jammed together. A lot of just learning covers first, that sort of thing. And at school, you know, because it is still mandatory it was still mandatory to do music. And as we got a little bit older and more into the music side of things, you can choose to do music at school. So then, you know, you've got school bands and things like that. But we've always jammed together ever since I got drums and he got a guitar, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I'd go. I'm hesitant to use the word forced, but yeah, I'd go and buy the Metallica tab book and say, okay, learn this.
Yeah.
We'll play those songs.
And yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah. So definitely, you know, starting out with the covers until it's like, well, you know, maybe let's try to write our own stuff. And we formed our first, I guess, extreme metal band. I think I was about 17. He would have been 14 or 15. Called Disseminate, which was a local Hobart band, like a death black metal style band.
Yeah.
That was the precursor to Psycroptic.
Yeah. And after all these years, you know, and you guys have had, you know, a hell of a run, since the late 90s. We've certainly seen examples of brothers working together in other bands. You know, AC/DC had brothers in the band. Oasis, you know, the Van Halen brothers. What's that dynamic like for you and Joe, though, as far as like, you know, brothers and also colleagues working together?
It's great. I mean, I think there's something in the connection where you don't have to hold back any sort of creative thoughts, you know, because you're not really going to hurt each other's feelings. You can probably go a little bit harder with the criticism than you could with, you know, people you weren't related to. That's kind of what we found. But, you know, on the flip side, we don't know anything different. You know, it's always been this way. So every band's got its own dynamic and its own, I guess, mini subculture within the actual band. So Psycroptic has always been Joe is the primary songwriter. And I think just, you know, his personalities and the way he plays, it just gels with how I do things as well. So it's been good. It's good. It's a good creative dynamic.
And when you say he writes most of the songs, you know, as a band, you know, what is the creative process like? You know, you're saying he writes most of the songs, but, you know, is that door open at all to collaborate, or is he always bringing in the lion's share of the ideas? Like, what's it like when you guys are saying, okay, we're going to do a new album now? Are there contributions from the rest of the guys, you know, on a lyrical or musical level?
Oh, definitely. So it's and every album's quite different in the way it comes together. There's no set formula, so to speak. Lately has been working just because geographically we live apart. Joe will almost come with fully formed song structures and ideas, which, you know, he'll send over. I will learn the structures. I might have input into, okay, maybe change this, maybe do this twice as long. So I definitely will help with the structural changes. So we've got a bit of a skeleton of the song. And once we're happy with that, track the drums. So we've actually got the framework. And then from there, musically, it can change. You know, sometimes we'll finish the drums and Joe will rewrite the complete song. So it's like chicken or the egg. You know, I've written drums to a song, but then it's evolved into a completely different song. So that process is, I mean, it's always changing. It's always evolving. There's no set way something will come about. In terms of lyrics, the last few albums, that's always been Jason writing all the lyrics. And lyric phrasing and that sort of thing. So it's definitely, the door is wide open for everyone's contributions. It's not just like, here's the riffs, here's the drum patterns, here's the guitar parts. There's, you know, it's not a dictatorship in that sense. It's very much a collaborative.
And do you guys, you know, consciously as a band, ever sit around and talk about or have a specific policy on your release format in terms of like now the music business is so different and with the streaming platforms, people are putting out a lot of singles. Some people are putting out EPs now. There are still bands out there putting out full LPs, but it seems like a mixed bag out there. Do you guys have a definitive idea what works best for Psycroptic? You guys like doing fully realized albums?
Yeah, I think that just works best for us, and all the albums have been a collection of 9 songs. And then maybe that's been something that's been conscious for the last couple. It's like, well, all the other albums are 9, so let's just give
go
it
with
9
it.
songs.
Let's go with it. 9's our number.
It seems to have a good creative flow in terms of it's an album, I've always loved putting an album on from start to finish.
Me too.
So with the band, that's something we like to do as well. The only exception was a couple of years ago, we did a 2-track EP, I guess you'd say it, but that was in the crazy pandemic times where we just wanted to do something to keep momentum happening, to keep something happening, to stay positive about how things were. But in terms of the albums, it's like, we're old school in that.
I love that.
We like that style. That's not to say it might not change. Who knows? But at this stage, it's like, well, when we talk about writing and recording a new album, that's how we refer to it. We're doing the next album.
And you bring up COVID, you mentioned doing the 2 tracks there, but overall, what was COVID like for you guys when everybody's hunkered down? Live shows were not an option. That was off the table. How did that affect you guys as a band? Did you guys, have plans or have an itinerary or a tour planned or anything going on? Like how did that hinder or not hinder you guys?
Well, I guess with pretty much every band in the world, everything was cancelled in terms of the live front, So we had plans for 2020. There was going to be another US tour and another European tour, and that was all in the works. Of course, obliterated. I think the worst. It was definitely a time.
It sure was.
I live in Melbourne. The rest of the guys live in. I'm in Melbourne. 2 of the guys are in Tasmania, and Todd Stern's in the US. I couldn't leave Melbourne, so I didn't see anyone. I didn't see any of the guys in person for almost 2 years. So it was definitely challenging on a lot of fronts, but creatively, we were able to do an album. Like we wrote and recorded Divine Council. During the lockdown, so we weren't in the same room at any one point in time while doing that album, which at the time was horrible musically, but I think the creative result is actually the best thing we've done. We were able to personally, I can only speak from my creative contributions, but because there was no other distractions, I could just work drum parts every day and refine everything. So by the time I went to record, every single part was it was almost note for note. I played what I'd written rather than improvise, which has happened in the past, or rush through things, whatever. Like it was. I think it was. We managed to get a very good positive result out of a negative situation. If I'm to summarize, that's what I'm trying to get. That's what I'm trying to get at.
And it was a negative situation too, for sure, for a lot of people. I mean, I'm here in the States. I work in healthcare, so that's my day job as a nurse, and literally
on the front line.
And literally, we just stopped wearing masks, and we were all talking about at work how amazing, how fast 3 years went by. I mean, it was becoming, we literally adopted it as part of the uniform. You put on your scrubs, and it became just automatic.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I mean, you got to see it firsthand, literally.
Yeah, 3 years of that mask. I'll tell you, I was glad to see it go. It's pretty great, and then it's over as soon as it starts. Right? We just get the news: pandemic over.
Done. Yeah.
Done.
It felt when we were able to tour for the first time last year. I think when we left and we did the States for the first time in 3 years. It felt, leaving Australia. It felt like, okay, it's quote unquote, it's over now. We're good to, now it's like, it seems like a distant memory, which is good. It's good.
And you guys are certainly, you're sneaking up on 25 years as a band. When you look back on all that time, and certainly we've touched on it here a little bit, all the changes, in the music industry, as a band, and right now in 2023, what is the best way to keep propelling and catapulting your career forward? Because so much has changed. The formulas change where labels used to sign you and really help catapult you along. How do you do it nowadays? I know bands are still making videos. What's the formula? Is it getting a lot of streams? Is it putting out that kick-ass album? Is it getting on a great tour package? Is it all of those things?
I mean, I think it's all of those things, but the thing that actually just keeps us going is the music itself. If we weren't into the music, and if we didn't love to write and perform this music, it's like there's 0 point. It's not our main, day job. So there's not an economic incentive for us to, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. So there is quite a lot of freedom in terms of all those things, from creative freedom to freedom to choose how we want to approach things tour-wise and that sort of thing. So we're definitely stuck in the old school way of doing things. That's probably partly force of habit, and then partly we enjoy doing it that way, and then partly not knowing any better. If we're being honest, so it is definitely changing. But then, a lot of elements are still staying the same. You go out there and tour and you put on a good show, and more people are going to come back next time.
And what is touring like, at this juncture in your career? Because obviously, the narrative in your life changes as years go by. You get families, kids, significant others, as you mentioned, a job that might keep you, tied down someplace. How do you guys plan out the itinerary nowadays? How does it work for each member of the band? How much of that luxury do you have to be able to go away for, X amount of days, weeks, months, whatever? How do you guys sort that all out with everybody's schedule? What's a comfortable itinerary for you guys at this point?
Well, it seems at the moment we can manage, say, every 8 to 12 months, we can do one international tour, so to speak. We did Europe a couple of months back with Arcspire. That was a killer tour. And then we're doing the States again this August with Decrepit Birth. So that's a pretty reasonable time spread between tours for us. I don't think we could manage too much more than that without it becoming just a grind and us not having jobs to come back to. So it definitely is a balancing act, and it's always been that way.
That unemployment's a good motivator.
Well, so it definitely a case by case scenario. When ideas or offers come in, we all discuss it to see whether we can make it work. Unfortunately, we're able to make it work most of the time. So it's
and obviously you being out on the road a lot. First of all, in your particular neck of the woods over there in Australia, what's the current music scene like around the area that you're in?
So I'm in Melbourne. It's killer. It's probably the live capital, the live music capital of Australia.
Yeah.
And Sydney's probably close behind that. So there's a lot of great bands, a lot of shows. All the time. There's artists touring. That's actually my day job. Is I'm a tour booker promoter. So
Okay.
Myself and my business partner Brad bring out bands from anywhere in the world and tour them around Australia. So in some regards, it's part of my job to kind of try to keep my finger on the pulse.
Yeah.
In terms of who's doing what, and just more efficient and more economically viable methods of touring and that sort of thing.
And are you the guy in the band who mostly takes care of, like, because it sounds like, if you're doing that for a job, that within Psycroptic, you probably are the guy who keeps a lot of the business stuff in order, because it always seems like there's one guy who ends up having that job in the band. And I don't know if it's the most enviable position, but usually somebody emerges who has a natural propensity to be good at it. I mean,
yeah, so unfortunately it is me, and I would freely admit that for my own band, I am not particularly, I'm not the best at it.
Yeah.
I'm much better at doing it for other bands, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, one is my job, and then after hours, it's like, oh, okay, this is my band as well. So I would rather just be able to do the music with Psycroptic, but I've got to wear a few hats to make things viable.
And as you get on and your career gets on, and don't read between the lines too much here, Dave. I'm certainly not saying that you're old by any means, but how does that? You certainly have one of the more physically demanding jobs within the band. How has drumming, and your approach to drumming and your preparation for drumming, has that changed at all as you've gotten older?
I've definitely tweaked it, but I've tried to keep it a pretty consistent schedule. As with anything physical, it goes away super quick. It'll come back quickly, but if you stop doing it, it just evaporates super quick. So for the last 25 years or so, pretty consistently I've played on the kit for at least an hour a day.
Okay.
And I don't know, it still feels good. I think I played probably the best in terms of the most consistently. The last European tour, I think I felt at the end of the tour, it's like, well, that's probably one of the more consistent runs that we've ever done. And I was pretty happy with it. And I guess one of the things I've been more conscious about the last couple of years was not partying on the road. Try to work out, exercise as much as possible, and just keep on top of things in terms of physical health, just to be able to get up there and perform each night. In the past, I probably haven't really considered that too much. So I guess the short answer is I can still do it when I can't do it, or when I'm not enjoying it anymore. Then that's when I'll stop.
Ingesting a couple more Tylenol, though, maybe along the way. A few more asprin, maybe a little residual soreness, or no? Even the physical toll has been good.
Yeah, it's been fine. Like, just cutting things out like alcohol and stuff like that on the road. That improves things infinitely.
Yeah. And when you're out on tour, what's the big difference that you see in between American audiences and European audiences? Because, and I'm saying this as somebody who lives in the United States, but it seems like, Americans, we certainly, at least I do it, and other people I've talked to too, we certainly look at the European market with some envy, because they do seem to be able to put on all the best huge rock and metal festivals, and they seem to go off without a hitch. People really seem to get it over there. And I'm not trying to impugn, all my fellow people here in the United States, But, you know, we do get a little fucking crazy sometimes at these circuit festivals, and they don't always go off as good as they do over in Europe. Over in Europe, it really seems like a communal experience, and the music and the whole process is really respected. I don't know. What's your take on the two different audiences?
I think US and, you know, perhaps all North American audiences are a bit more enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I probably prefer to play to North American audiences. Just they seem to be into it a little bit more. European logistics and venues are vastly superior to North American.
Yeah.
They just know how it's done. You know, you get looked after a lot better. It's a lot easier to get around. So there's pros and cons of both markets for sure, but not trying to offend any of my European.
No, I'm one of them. So I mean,
but perhaps they're a little bit spoiled, so they, in some cases, that don't appreciate it as much as some of the North American audiences. So yeah, it's easier to tour in Europe, more comfortable, but probably better reactions in North America.
And you guys have a pretty correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. Now, Jason has been the vocalist since early 2000s, right? Ballpark, somewhere around there. And you know, it seems like this has been a pretty stable lineup now for quite a long time. It seems like right now in the music business, from other bands I've talked to on here, you know, trying to keep the morale up, you know, in really what's become a feast or famine business. You know, do you really feel like, you know, this going forward, you know, is the last, you know, and obviously anything can happen. You never want to say never, but does this feel like, you know, the last final lineup of Psycroptic, where these guys, you all feel like you're kind of rowing in the same direction, so to speak, like everyone's on the same page and not going anywhere?
Yeah, well, I hope so, because it definitely, the morale and the vibe in the band, you know, we're all on the same page. We're all as passionate as we were in the beginning. We all still love it, so definitely, you know, I hope so. That I hope this is it, you know.
And are you guys now on tour? Because I've watched on YouTube a couple of the Bus Invaders episode, and you guys were living very meager for a while. I saw a van that was towing a trailer behind it. Then you guys had moved up to something that seemed like here in the States, you know, when I watched the episode, there was a little more akin to kind of like a camper, so to speak.
Yeah, so we found what works best for us is the RV in the States.
Okay.
It's a step up from the van. It's way more economical than a full bus. So
yeah.
And in some regards, it's a little bit more comfortable, you know, because we can roll solo. We can do our own schedule. It's still affordable and fairly comfortable. So yeah, the next tour we do in August, we're doing the same thing. We're going out in an RV.
And so I know this. And I know this could be, you know, somewhat of a loaded question, but, you know, certainly, you know, you guys having done, you know, death metal for so long, and really it's such a proficient level, you know, it's just, it's technical, it's extremely progressive, you know, you can tell you guys are, you know, there's a lot of craftsmanship there and attention to detail. But who are other bands out there in your genre who you really like? Like, who's out there that's really like, you know, like the death metal Mount Rushmore, so to speak? Who do we put up there?
Yeah, no, that's a loaded question.
I know you gotta go out there. You gotta go out there and see these guys. I know.
I mean, Cattle Decapitation have been killing it the last few years. They've definitely raised the bar. Definitely doing their own thing. It's, you know, it's extreme death metal, but it's their own thing. I've always loved Dying Fetus in terms of, you know, musicality and their work ethic. Newer bands, Oxbar, another band. I love the guys musically.
Oxbar. Archspire, yes. Okay, yeah. I thought someone was getting lost in translation. Yeah, I'm actually in talks, you know, to get one of the fellas on here. Yeah, I love Archspire. I don't think I was catching it the first time around. Oh, they're amazing, and it's so technical. Amazing
Yeah,
guys, amazing
and
musicians.
they've got their own sound as
Yeah.
well. So they're definitely pushing the genre forward as well. Yeah, there's so many killer bands. So many killer bands.
Is that the important thing in making it in the music business, like nowadays? It's setting setting yourself apart, because there is there's so much music being made. Like someone told me today that there's like 60,000 new songs coming out every day, and people can sit home and make an album on their computer. And obviously there's not a lot of heart and soul behind it when you're not actually playing the instrument, but people can do it. I mean, there's an influx of music out there. But like, are you able to ever, like explore any new bands, or like when you have time as a fan, to relax and listen to music just for your own pleasure? Are you somebody that kind of falls back on your old staples, or are you good about trying to stay, I mean, obviously you said you're trying to keep your ear to the pavement with what you do for a living. But as a fan though, if you have time to listen to music, what direction do you go in?
It depends. It seems to be very cyclical. Sometimes I just want the old classics. The other day I just went on a mayhem binge of all the old stuff. And then yesterday it was okay. Let's have a look at the Spotify release radar, see what's new, and see what new bands we can discover from that. So it really depends. And then sometimes I just don't want to listen to music at all. I'll listen to an audiobook. So it depends. It depends. I definitely try to keep up to date with what's happening. Yeah, of course, as you said, in terms of what I do for a living, it's like who's out there doing what,
right?
What bands are going to work with which bands, putting them together to create a package for the punters, and then for my own listening pleasure, sometimes I'll put on 70s rock, and the next day it could be extreme underground black metal, and then the next day it could be ambient, stuff like or Heilung or Wadruna and stuff like that. So definitely a mixed bag in terms of what I listen to, but definitely heavily to the darker side of music, I guess you'd say.
But you guys play, certainly, it's death metal all the way. It's extreme metal. It's very heavy, but there certainly is melodic structure and tempo changes and melody, and you can certainly hear the musicality in what you do, despite how brutal it is. Are there bands out there, and we're not going to mention any names, but just just stylistically though, can music sometimes, and I'm talking about the bands with a lot of blast beats and where it just comes across as like a wall of noise, can music be too heavy for the sake of being heavy, where it ceases to be enjoyable, or is there no limits in sky's the limit, balls to the wall, heavy as you can fucking go?
That's a very good question. Now, I'd like to see it keep getting more and more extreme.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
I don't know personally whether I'd enjoy it, but I think,
it's tough.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. Just keep pushing the limits of it. Just to see where it goes. So, when the hairs stand up on your arm when you're listening to something, that's when you love something. You don't have any say in it. It's like, well, this is amazing.
Right. It just does something to you. Yeah.
There's some connection there. So long as that happens, I guess it doesn't really matter how heavy it gets.
Yeah. Heavier the better. Yeah.
Keep pushing the limits. And even if I'm not into it, someone's going to be into it. So of course, push it.
And now you put out Divine Counsel in 2022, which I listened to a couple times today in anticipation of us talking. A brilliant fucking album. But then again, I haven't listened to too many of your albums that I that I haven't thought are brilliant. Everything that you guys do to me seems absolutely brilliant. But following that up, how much pressure is there, because people's attention span is so short nowadays, because it's so feast or famine, as I mentioned, and people seem to want to keep their name out there, stay relevant, We don't want people to forget. How much pressure do you put to keep getting new music out? Like you put this album out in 2022. Is there a timetable you guys discuss? Like, okay, we got this much time. We let's get something back out again.
We seem to constantly be working on new material. It takes us quite a long time to put an album together, so we just keep working. So I'd say we're a third halfway there for like the writing process for the next one. I personally hope to be in the studio later this year. That's when I'd like to at least start tracking the drums. We'll see how it goes. We definitely work at a slower pace than some other bands, but other bands we work way quicker than. But we don't really put aside, okay, 6 months now we're going to write the album. It's more like as soon as one album's finished, we're starting to put ideas together for songs for the next album.
Yeah.
So there's always something.
So there is somewhat of like a, you guys are consciously aware of some time of like, okay, we have to be putting stuff out because, there's a lot of, do you feel that pinch of like, of competition? Like, okay, there's been a lot of metal releases, we've got to keep up, or do you guys not even think that way? You're on your own timetable.
Yeah. I mean, probably subconsciously there's a bit of that going on, but I think we just enjoy the creative process. So we're continually working on stuff. And as, the songs start to evolve and it's like, okay, there's an album forming, then maybe there's a little bit more of a push and I'm not going to say rush, but there's a bit more energy and a bit more urgency in the writing and the recording when we start, okay, we're booking studio time. Okay, we're talking to different artists, that sort of thing. It starts to gather a bit more momentum.
And as an Australian, I have to ask because I've had other Australian artists on here before. A fan of Vegemite or no?
I would say yes, with conditions applied.
Okay, and those conditions are what? Because I haven't encountered anybody yet from Australia that has anything bad to say about it. Even though when they describe it, they seem to almost describe it, with the intention of making it sound somewhat disgusting.
I mean, it's an acquired taste for sure.
Okay.
Everyone's got their own preferences, how they like it applied and what they like it on, and what they like it with. So I guess my preference, it needs to be a lot of butter. And
I've heard that. I've heard the lot of butter thing. Yeah, I've heard the lot of butter thing from everybody.
A lot of butter and a light to medium application. That would be my preferred.
Right. You kind of got to go thin with it. Thin over the butter.
Yeah. So you got to get the balance right between the butter and the Vegemite.
Yeah. What is the attraction though, like with the Vegemite? Because I was led to believe by somebody though that at one point, calling it Vegemite and insinuating, it seemed like it gave it the ring of sounding very, very, healthy. Is that what it was geared towards?
I think early on it probably was, but I also think they were just trying to get rid of.
Give this shit away.
The other product, put out this shit thing that's very unique in flavor. We're grown up with it, so I guess we're accustomed to it. And there's a bit of I don't know, the cultural thing. It's like, well, yeah, you can't talk shit about it. This is our thing.
Right. Yeah.
So there's definitely a little bit of that behind it as well. But I don't mind it. It's there's always been a jar in any cupboard any house that I've lived in. There's always been a mainstay.
It's a mainstay. It's got to be
there. It's a staple.
It's got to be there. Now, this is usually a deal breaker right here. This usually, as I start to wrap up the interview, is usually the toughest question right here. So brace yourself, okay? Your desert island pick. Okay, I'm dropping you, David, on a desert island, and you can only take one fucking album with you. And none of this cheating shit with any compilations or greatest hits albums. Just an album that you're going to bring, and you're going to live with this fucking thing for maybe a long time.
I'd say Immortal, Battles in the North.
Wow, you were definitive, too. You were very definitive. That was one of the quicker answers that I've gotten back. And you're sure that you could live with this album, and even as you run the gamut of emotions, this is the album that you want to get you through everything.
100%.
Wow,
100%.
wow. And why so definitive? Like, what does the album mean to you?
Have you heard it? It's completely insane. It's ridiculous. I love it. And every time I listen to it, it's still as insane and still conjures up the same thoughts when I first heard it. When I first heard the album, I was like, this is insane. How can something be so intense? And that was, it was put out in the mid-90s, and it still conjures up the same emotions and thoughts as when I first listened to it. So
is there I'm sure people equate people who play extreme metal, and I know this isn't the case from talking to other extreme metal artists. It's not just, metal nonstop, playing it, coming off the stage, listening to it constantly. You have to probably have some kind of respite period from it. I mean, so what would be something, that people would be surprised that you would listen to and actually enjoy that's not extreme metal? Like, are you popping on like a Taylor Swift album or something like that? I don't imagine you are, but
no, not as crazy as that. I guess stuff like Dead Can Dance, Wadruna. There's an artist I've been listening to, Danheim, I guess. Any sort of, I guess, soundscape, sort of soundtrack sort of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I listen to that sort of stuff quite a lot. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to get. I'm by no means trying to get you to fess up to nothing. I don't want you to get your metalhead card pulled or anything like that. I'm not trying to extract any information, that's going to get you ostracized in the metal world. So I mean, I'm always just, it's intriguing, because I think, I've hit the nail on the head there, right? Like, you couldn't, are you the type of person who could be satisfied with playing death metal and then listening to it all the time? That would be very difficult, wouldn't it?
No, definitely not. No. To appreciate it, you need to stand away from it, and you need to bring other influences into it to drive it forwards. Otherwise, you're just going to be a death metal cover band. I would say, my musical taste leans a lot more to the extreme side of things, but a cool song is a cool song, and that's undeniable.
Yeah. And what about favorite drummers? Who are some guys as drummers, as a drummer yourself, who are some guys whose playing that you just absolutely love? Like, when you hear their drumming, your ears perk up and you listen in appreciation of them.
I guess the cheat answer would be anyone doing something that I don't know how they're doing it, and there's still some magic behind it. That makes sense. Sometimes you hear something, and I guess playing the instrument this long, you can decipher most things. Like, I'll hear something, and know exactly how it's played. It's like, cool, I can go and play that. But when someone plays something and it just sounds like magic, it's like, wow, it brings some of the mystique of the instrument out. That's kind of diverting around your question.
It's a diplomatic answer. Diplomatic.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'll listen to, all of the old gods, your Dave Lombardo, even down, Lars got me into playing metal drums, listening to Ride the Lightning, right the way through to your fusion players like Dave Weckl and Virgil Donati, some of the modern day fusion jazz guys like Benny Greb. And then back to Derek Roddy and Dave Kulros and Kevin Talley. I still love hearing creative drum parts of any style. So when I hear something I resonate with, it's like, cool, well, I'm going to take that and I'm going to see what I can do with it.
Yeah. I would be remiss, of course, and I don't want to hear about it in the comments section. I would be remiss if I didn't ask for some type of a timetable for the Psycroptic fans out there. Do you have any kind of a timetable on when you'd like to have new music out? Sometime in 2024, would you anticipate?
Yeah. I'm gonna say 2024, definitely.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know when, but we're working on it.
Yeah, that's good news. That's good news for fans out there. I had a lot of fun talking to you, and this was really enjoyable, man. And I thank you so much for doing it, man. I really appreciate it. And please keep in touch. And, when the album comes out, hopefully we can get on here. We can do it again. I'd love to talk to you again.
100%. It was a great time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for making the time. All right.
No worries, man. You take care.
Later, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Bye.
Thank you. Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And there he goes, folks. Your main man, Rex Ruger, has done it again. Mr. International, reaching over to our Australian metal brothers. That is David Haley, drummer extraordinaire for Psycroptic, longtime leaders in the forefront of death metal, at the forefront of death metal, I should say. Psycroptic, if you don't know, as I said earlier in the interview, telling Dave, doesn't want to get his metalhead card pulled for admitting that he's listening to anything too wimpy. Likewise, if you don't know Psycroptic, the metalhead card gets pulled. Go out and check out their last album, 2022's Divine Council. It's a fucking shredder, a face melter. Rex Ruger approved 150%. Those guys know how to do death metal, man. Brothers David Haley and Joe Haley. Working together, bringing us great death metal from way on the other side of the world. Australian death metal at its finest. That is Psycroptic, man. Love those guys. Just technically proficient, amazing musicians. And just every song a banger. Every song will melt your fucking face off. That's a guarantee. Might even say it on the back of the CD. I don't know. This music will melt your face off. If it doesn't, that disclaimer should be on there because that's what Psycroptic's music does. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Thank you to David Haley for being on here, man, all the way from Australia, where it is 14 hours in the other direction, his time. We started that interview around 8 p.m. Eastern time, where it was 10 a.m. the next morning for him. So making the time, figuring out the time difference, and getting it done. Thanks, David Haley, and I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. And until we get together and we do this again, remember, kids, to take it easy and keep it sleazy.